Testing, testing. Testing, testing. Testing, testing, mic check. Testing, testing.
All right, good morning. We're going to call to order the annual board meeting of Pinellas Core Management Services. Could please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, our first action item is to approve the PCMS minutes from April 10th, 2025.
I move to approve.
Second.
Move second. Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next is to appoint the new PCMS board members. I'll ask our interim CEO to do that.
Good morning. Last year, we always have an annual Pinellas Core Management Services meeting, and Ms. Renee Chia and Ms. Alicia McShay came on board after that annual meeting. So this is formality to add you, both board members, to the board for PCMS.
We'll take a motion to add our new members.
Sorry.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next up is confirmation of appointment of officers. We have a chair, myself, Jim Milliken, treasurer, Ms. Nage, and secretary, the Honorable Bruce Bartlett.
Move approval.
Second.
Second, any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Then we have information items. Anybody have anything they want to bring up?
Just, I think before the meeting, we were talking about just having maybe Ms. Bogus and Ms. Flynn and our team evaluate the necessity of PCMS going forward, just because it's been so long since I remembered what it was for originally. I don't even, recall. So if we don't need to do this every year and we can use these funds for something else, it would be a good time to evaluate that.
I agree, because I think it was originally done for the neighborhood family centers, if I remember correctly.
Correct. Back in the day, it was started through that, and then we did have, at one point, we had matching funds running through it as a component unit of JWB. It's part of the audit. And the only thing I would say is that since it is a 501c3, Ms. Porter should give you a small update on the 990 tax form, as is required under governance for 501c3s.
Okay.
Good morning, Leslie Porter, Controller, Director of Accounting. So PCMS, as we've discussed, is a separate legal entity, excuse me, under the Internal Revenue Code 501c3. So as such, it must file an annual Form 990 with the IRS. In the past, PCMS has been used as a vehicle passing through grants, but it has been dormant since FY23. There's minimal activity reported on the 990 for the year ended 9/30/25. There was no grant activity. We're reporting interest income of $44, expenses of $5,193, primarily for accounting, tax preparation, banking fees, and insurance. There's little change from last year's 990, and I'm open to any questions you may have.
Any questions? Seeing none, so we'll ask Colleen and staff to evaluate that and see if we can maybe get rid of that program. All right. Take a motion to adjourn. All right. Next up is our JWB board meeting. We'll call that meeting to order. First up is our acknowledgement of JWB Kids First Cooperman Book Awards. Ms. Bogus.
Good morning again. And the Juvenile Welfare Board believes that those who work to give children brighter futures deserve recognition. And today we are honoring our next Kids First awardee, an outstanding VPK teacher who consistently goes above and beyond to put children first. And I would like to introduce Melissa Mapes. Yay. And Ms. Mapes is a dedicated, creative, compassionate, and all-in for kids teacher. Over the last 29 years at the Gingerbread Preschool of Carillon, Ms. Mapes has created a classroom where children feel safe, valued, and truly known. Because she understands each child so well, her students do not just learn, they flourish. And her impact goes far beyond her classroom. She is a trusted mentor, a calm leader, and a generous guide to fellow teachers. She has helped others grow their confidence, strengthen their practice, and advance their careers. Since the beginning of her career in 1986, Melissa has made a lasting difference for children and families across Pinellas County. Even one of our staff and her family went through the preschool themselves. She knows early learning is about more than academics, but it's about building confidence, resilience, and a love of learning that lasts. And this is the craziest thing ever. She has perfect attendance. I mean, for 29 years, perfect attendance at a preschool. Her legacy is extraordinary. Families have chosen the VPK program because of Ms. Mapes, and former students return to share their success, proof that love, care, and excellence she gives children lasts a lifetime. And we saw that when we went there to surprise her. The amount of people that were there cheering her on and supporting her was amazing. Melissa, thank you for your extraordinary service, your steady example, and the countless ways you've put children first. It is an honor to celebrate you and your remarkable difference you continue to make every day. And please join me in congratulating.
Thank you for this recognition. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Melissa, and congratulations.
I just like to say I absolutely love the name. It's so cute.
All right, moving on to our consent items.
I have,
Ms. Chia?
yep, thank you. I have some things I'd like to say about the minutes real quick. So although I don't have extensive edits this time, because I do believe that the minutes pretty closely reflect what was said at the last meeting, I think a lot of what was said at the last meeting, especially in regards to me, was false. And that Chief and Commissioner Latvala have continuously tried to imply that I have some unethical behaviors that need to be addressed. I've never engaged in any unethical behavior while serving on the JWB or elsewhere within my profession and my life. So I would like those states to be formally corrected, whether they're in print or whether they're being said at other board meetings where I am not in attendance to defend myself. So, and I also want to offer both Chief Milliken, I know Commissioner Latvala is not here, the opportunity to raise with me any issues that you think that I have done that are unethical, and we can discuss those in the sunshine or elsewhere. Because there was a whole lot of just mush thrown out in a 20-minute, sort of tirade last meeting. So, Chief, is there anything that you'd like to address at this particular time?
My comment was to the board, not you directly, that there's ethical issues going on. Based on all the text messages that came out of that public records request, based on all the things that we're seeing, that was where I was leading. It wasn't directed to you directly. It was directed at the public records request. There's things missing. When you read them, there's things missing in between those text messages that were turned in. Mm-hmm. So, there's a story, and then there's a piece missing, and then there's the rest of the story. So that was where I was directing that at.
Okay, because the Tampa Bay Times printed that differently, so that's the only reason I'm raising it today, is to make sure that we have that very clear, so it doesn't continue to perpetuate. Yeah. The only actual sentence that I think needs to be changed, Colleen, is the one that says Ms. Chia requested those documents. Yeah, it's in the minutes. It's under special report. I know the minutes are so long. Under special report 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, okay, page number 4. Page number 4. The second to last paragraph starts with Ms. Chia requested those documents and correspondences and asked for a meeting with JWB. I did not ask for a meeting with JWB. Mike McCurek asked for me to come into his office so that he could bring staff in to have a deeper dive conversation on the things that he and I were discussing. So I just want to make sure that that's reflected correctly.
Change it to Ms. Chia requested those documents and a meeting was held on February 18th, 2026.
That's better.
So just strike out, ask for a meeting with JWB.
That is all.
So you can have a motion for approval of the minutes with the modification, and we will make that modification.
Okay, we'll take that motion.
I move to approve the minutes with the corrections.
Okay, and a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. And then the financial and investment report for March and April.
Move approval.
Motion?
Second.
Second, any discussion? All in favor, aye. Any, motion carries. All right, next up is action items. Approve the community council appointments. Ms. Garcia, Community Engagement Manager.
Good morning, Yanidis Garcia, Community Engagement Manager, and I'm here to recommend two outstanding candidates to serve on the Mid-County Community Council. The first applicant is Isabella Moradian. She's the founder of Bella Books Bridge, a community-based initiative that connects book donors with children in need. The organization serves children in clinics, hospitals, and foster care, as well as children who have survived abuse. During times of hardship, caregivers are often focused on urgent needs, such as medical care, housing, bills, and safety. Bella's Book Bridge helps preserve a child's sense of youth by ensuring that even in difficult circumstances, every child has the opportunity to simply be a child. Isabella is an Armenian American whose parents immigrated to the United States to provide a safer life for her and her brother. Their sacrifices inspire her commitment to community service and shape her belief in caring for the whole person, not just immediate survival needs. She hopes to become a doctor who advocates for every aspect of a patient's well-being, not only their physical health. The second candidate is Jillian Rose. She is the Community Engagement Program Manager for the City of Pinellas Park, where she's dedicated to creating opportunities that bring people together, strengthen families, and inspire the next generation of leaders. Passionate about youth development, water safety, education, and community engagement, she connects residents with programs and resources that make a lasting difference in the community. Throughout her career, she has championed initiatives that empower young people, foster meaningful partnerships, and enhance the quality of life for residents of all ages. She currently leads the city's Youth Empowerment Skills YES program, helping teens build leadership relations, skills, confidence, and a greater connection to their community. Beyond her work with the city, she assists her husband in operating the Police and Kids Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated in supporting youth, strengthening community relationships, and creating positive opportunities for children and families. As a member of the Juvenile Welfare Board, Mid-County Community Council, both of them are honored to support the efforts that improve the life of children and families throughout Pinellas County. With this appointment, we will have 44 active community councils throughout Pinellas County. And they're here today with us, Isabella and Jillian, so we can recognize you.
Okay, so we'll take a motion to accept the new members.
I'll move to accept the new members.
Second, all right, any discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. None opposed? Motion carries. Welcome, ladies. Thank you very much for your commitment to JWB. All right, next up is the approve the agreement with the interim chief executive officer, Ms. Bogus. Take a motion.
Mr. Chair, the only thing I would like to amend is the term to extend it to December 1st. Right now it says May 21st to November 21st, and I feel like just giving ourselves till December 1st would give us a little more room in the event we needed to extend it or have another meeting, and that's right around the Thanksgiving timeframe, so I would be more comfortable if the term went to December 1st.
Okay. Okay with that?
I have a couple issues on this item I'd like to raise as well.
Okay.
As you know, I brought up last meeting some concerns where I just wanted to have a discussion on this, and it's no reflection on Ms. Bogus at all. It has to do with the fact that I think we should be more prudent about the I guess, powers that we give an interim CEO versus a permanent CEO. And so I took the opportunity to sort of look up a couple things, and then I also found some interesting things that we might want to add to this, and also potentially to the contract for Ms. Brock coming up in G. So let me just run through them really quick, and I'd just like to know how the board feels about it. I'm not necessarily married to any of these. I just think that they're worth raising. So in the bylaws, or in the let's start with the contract. So under duties, it says interim chief executive officer is authorized to and will perform the duties of the regular chief executive officer as specified in the bylaws of the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas and board policies, and will perform such other legally permissible and proper duties and functions as the board shall from time to time assign. I think we should add a phrase that says except for, and add just a couple of the things that I'm gonna recommend here. One of them being in the bylaws, Article 4, number 7, the authority to approve and execute settlement agreements when paid with insurance proceeds. I think that this should come before the board, especially since we still have an outstanding, settlement issue from Mr. McCurrack. I think it would be prudent governance to make sure that that comes before the board rather than being approved by an interim CEO. And number 8, executing contracts with the monetary limitation base stated in board policy. I know the monetary limitation right now is $50,000. I just would like to know from other fellow board members if for an interim we should reduce that. And then, hit the mic with my thing. And then in the policies, under section 2, number 1, staff affiliation with other agencies. This is just one of the things that popped out at me. Chief, I think that you need to be the board chair for the ELC. I believe that Mike McCurrack was still doing that duty. So that's just sort of a observation. And then under 2.2 endorsements, I think that an interim CEO should not be making public endorsements, and I just raised this because we are going into a political, section. It says the JWB Chief Executive Officer and/or his designee shall have the authority to issue endorsements or letters of support to agencies or individuals that are aligned with the focus and priorities of the board.
So let me just hop in on ELC. I believe the JWB's CEO or board chair is in your statute, correct? Okay, and because of certain issues, it's typically been the CEO for as long as I can no, it was the board chair? It's gone back and forth, okay. So pursuant to that statute, it either has to be the board chair or the CEO. Under the law, and that's always been not necessarily addressed by this because it refers to staff, which I see your point, it could be generally, but that has always been either the CEO or the board chair. With respect to the endorsements, that's not a political endorsement, because this is for hypothetically, sometimes agencies ask for, endorsements. If they're looking for other grants, Karen can speak to that. But if somebody's looking for a grant, then the typically CEO has said, "Oh yes, they work with JWB. We fund them to the tune of whatever," and so that's not a political. JWB cannot endorse candidates, and
Thought that was a little weird, so that's
correct.
helpful.
Yes. Now, and just so you understand, legally we can't prohibit people. Any staff outside of their business hours, just like you as a county employee is in their handbook as well, but during business hours is a whole different topic of political endorsements.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you. So then I would just raise to the board, is this something that an interim CEO should be sitting in that, or should we just have the board chair do it for consistency purposes? And then in section 3A, program funding for for-profit entities. I'm not sure if this provision has been used yet. I know Mr. McCurrack had this updated in the policies, but I would think moving for an interim CEO, I would like to see any engagements that we're doing with for-profit entities come before the board for a board approval, rather than just, moving forward without us seeing it specifically. And then in section, I just wanted to, and I'm sure Ms. Bogus knows, but in section 1.3 financial disclosures, you will be required to do your financial disclosures by July the 1st. I'm sure you know that. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about as far as the policies is there's a lot of stuff in here regarding the CFO, and the CFO shall and the CFO will, and we don't presently have a CFO. And, I know Ms. Mogus is sitting in the COO and the CEO's position right now, and I have great concerns that we have very weak upper executive leadership, and that this might create some issues moving forward. So my recommendation would be that we put that in Ms. Brock's contract, if that's possible, when we get to that piece to talk about, that she could essentially stand in for these items in the policies until a CFO can be hired. And then as far as the actual contract goes, the only couple items that stood out for me on that, regarding a interim, is the car allowance of $1,000 per month in lieu of mileage. I don't know if we want that in an interim's contract. And then also there's a piece about requesting FSR permit overlap for employee and outgoing interim chief executive officer in the senior management class just for the period of May 21st through June 1st. And if it's not approved, then blah, blah, blah. I'm just not sure why we would want to ask for that anyway, because starting June 1st, when there's no longer any overlap, then it's obvious that, that Ms. Bogus would be in the senior management class for the FRS.
Sure, so let me just address that, because that's easy.
Sure.
We've always done that whenever there's been an overlap between Dr. Biddleman and Ms. Houghton, and then between Ms. Houghton and Mr. McCurrick, and so that was already done after the last board meeting for those that 9-day period.
Are those usually approved?
Yes,
as well?
and yes, it's you just have to write a letter and just tell them we have 2 people in that position for 9 days.
Okay.
And just so that, because when you submit the reports to FRS, typically there's only one CEO, but then they're going to get a report showing 2. So we just have to follow the formal procedure of writing them a letter. It's very standard. And it's already been done, quite frankly, based on the board's action at the last meeting, where you agreed to use the same terms for Ms. Bogus as you had for Mr. McCurrick.
Right, okay. That is all my concerns. I'd just like to hear from my fellow board members if any of those are concerns for you, and if we should just, put a little provision in the contract to have these things come before the board. I'm not saying that she won't perform those things, but just that they would come before the board for a review before the interim CEO would take action on those.
I'm personally comfortable with Ms. Bogus having all the powers that are in the contract. That would be typical of a CEO, and I don't know that we want to be involved in things that the board is typically not involved in, and that's where I'm at on it. So I move to approve the agenda item as written with a term to expire on December 1st.
A motion,
I second.
second. Any further discussion?
I was going to say exactly what Mr. Ong said, so, yes.
Okay. Any other discussion?
We talked at the last board meeting, I don't think it specifically states in the contract that she won't be applying for the permanent position. I would feel comfortable if that was outlined in there just to prevent anything specific creating what we, kind of gone through.
So let me,
I think it was.
Was
No.
it?
She
No,
said she said she wasn't gonna apply.
Right.
Right, and I know we have the verbal commitment, I just think from, having it spelled out, just to prevent any.
I want to just say where I'm at on that, Mr. Chair, if that's all right.
Yep.
So my dad gave me some really good advice as a young man. And he said, keep your options open. Keep your options open doesn't mean be indecisive or don't make decisions. It means don't unnecessarily restrict the decisions that you have the option to make. And we don't know what the future holds in terms of who the candidates are going to be for the full search. And we don't know if we're going to be satisfied or elated. There's a lot of unknowns right now in local government. We don't know if people are gonna be unwilling to apply for this position. So I don't want Ms. Bogus to be an active candidate. I don't want her to be campaigning for it. And I think she's committed to not do that. But if we're sitting here in November or December and we know that Ms. Bogus has done an awesome job and everybody's like super excited with where JWB is at, which is what I think is probably gonna happen, I wanna have the option to hire her. So I'm not gonna artificially restrict my options just because. I just don't think that's the right thing to do. So I think that Ms. Bogus not being a candidate is definitely something she's already committed to, but just artificially saying if she's doing an awesome job and everybody in the community wants her as the permanent, why would we say we're not gonna allow her to be the permanent if that's the choice the board makes and if she's willing to do it, right? If she's willing to do it at that point. So I don't think we should put in the contract because I don't wanna artificially restrict our choices.
I was looking for it, I thought there was a provision in here about it, but I don't think that the way it was written in my memory, it would restrict the board from doing anything the board wants to do moving forward. We can always do whatever we want to do, but I think it was just that she wouldn't apply and, participate, like you're saying, in the campaigning of the position. I do think there was something in there, wasn't there?
No.
Oh, I thought there was, okay.
No.
I thought I saw something about it, but, okay.
Yeah. And I think just for me, my wish right now with the interim, with everything that we've come through, and this is, again, nothing towards Ms. Bogus, but just in general, is just with the interim, the primary responsibility really just focusing on sustaining the organization, working towards our goals and the initiatives that we have going forward, and keeping it so that it's set up for when we do finally have that permanent, whoever it is, can jump in and we're not making major changes or, if anything along that line, we're just really sustaining what we have and getting back to focusing and moving forward.
Okay, so I would be in agreement with Mr. Ronks as well. I think we shouldn't limit ourselves, but we do have a motion, a second. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor, aye? Aye. Any opposed? No opposition. Motion carries. Next up is the approval of the executive recruiting firm contract and the process for the chief executive officer, Ms. Mary Grace. Laura Hayes, sorry.
Good morning. I'm Lorraine Hayes. I'm the Senior Contract Manager and Purchasing Agent here at JWB. And some of you may recognize me from assisting the CEO search committee last year. At the last board meeting, the board directed staff to review full-service executive recruiting firms and return in June with a recommendation. Proposals have been provided to the board in advance, and a copy of the summary of the 4 firms, along with the MGT proposal, are at your chairs. We are going to take this presentation and action in 3 parts. With me presenting on the first action item, staff's recommendation to select MGT as the awarded vendor, and 2, authorize JWB staff to finalize the agreement. I'm then going to turn it over to Mary Grace Duffy, and she's going to present on the third action item, the steps on how the board would like to move forward with the recruiting process and authorize staff to proceed with the next phase of the recruitment in coordination with the selected firm. So at first, I'm going to just provide you all some background, like a quick refresher. The CEO search committee was established in June 2025 to guide the CEO selection process. After meeting and conducting research, the committee decided to obtain full-service proposals. The committee reviewed proposals and heard presentations from 3 firms, including MGT, whose staff are recommending today. MGT was invited for a second presentation on its full-service search approach, and at least each committee member was able to be at least one of those presentations with MGT. The committee had unanimously recommended MGT to the board. So how did we get here today? Staff requested proposals and quotes from 6 nationally recognized executive recruiting firms. 4 of the firms submitted responses. Responses were evaluated based on experience, methodology, scope of services, and cost. Staff are recommending selecting MGT as the awarded vendor today. So why are we recommending MGT? MGT was previously reviewed in detail and unanimously recommended by the CEO Search Committee. Its services, staffing, and pricing remain consistent with the prior review. Staff determined MGT is well qualified for the full service executive recruitment support requested by the board. MGT is also the lowest quote of the 4 firms. Staff are requesting today, Action 1, approve staff's recommendation to select MGT as the awarded vendor for executive recruiting services to support the CEO search.
Take a motion to, motion, a second?
I'll second.
Second, any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, Action 2, authorize JWB staff to finalize the agreement subject to JWB legal approval.
A motion? Second? Second, any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. I am going to invite Mary Grace up to the podium so that she can present on the 3rd action item.
Thanks, Laura. And it's nice to see everyone and be able to be heard as well after the last couple of meetings. So you've chosen MGT, and so right now then there are really kind of 2 additional questions on the table in terms of next steps and process for you. So the first is, and this is really a strong recommendation from both the procurement staff and from me as somebody who's been working with you on the search, is that you allow staff to direct MGT to look at the current job description, the current posting description, and ask them in July, which is your next board meeting, to come back to you with any recommendations they would have for modifying those 2 documents. If you remember, you approved those in December. So if they're going to modify them, we want you to approve any modification. And, attached to that, we'd also like them to come back with any collateral materials that they might have that would support a recruitment process using whatever job description and posting they come up with. They talk in their proposal about a brochure. I'd like that to be more general and say collateral materials. Let them figure out, given what you need, what's the best way to go about that. You already have a lot of stuff from April and her team have done just a fabulous job with the website, other materials that get used at Cooperman Bogue or the Children's Summit or other places. So there's a lot of stuff around and available about JWB. So we would say, ask them to come back with however they want to combine all of that into collateral materials. And then the 4th thing that I would ask them to come back with, so the first would be the job description, the posting description, the collateral materials, and then what really is their strategy around placing, and I'll put this in quotes, kind of ads or announcements about this position. Where do they want to place them and for how long? What's the timeline with that? So that if you approve those things when they, one approve asking them to do that between now and July 1st, I think it's the 21st is your meeting, your July meeting. And then secondly, doing that, approving that at the July meeting, that would allow them to get all of that stuff in action and implementation prior to your September meeting. And when I looked at the calendar, it looks like you have about 7 weeks between the July meeting and the September meeting. And so when you look at their proposal, that's about the amount of time that they wanted for that preliminary piece to be able to generate candidates to bring back to you. So that's the first thing. And I think if we could get approval from that, then we'll talk about what do you want to do with the stuff they give you and how do you want to go forward with that. But are you okay with having the staff direct them to do those things? by the July meeting so that they can meet with you as a group in the sunshine in July. Now, I know in their proposal, they've also talked about potentially meeting with you individually before the July meeting, and that's just something that they'll have to set up and you'd have to agree to do individually. But this, I want to look at the stuff that has to happen as a full board.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'd be totally comfortable with that and just giving us the chance to evaluate their opinion on
Right.
moving forward on those things. I also think it would be super valuable for all of us to meet with them individually before
I
July
agree with
21st,
that.
to the extent that
Yeah.
we're available. I definitely would love to do that. I think
Yeah.
that would help streamline things.
I
and,
agree.
Yeah, make things a lot more
Right.
smooth.
And do we have a full timeline? Like when the search is over, where we would be hiring?
It's in their proposal, and that Excel sheet that Laura and Kelly
okay.
put together has a listing around weeks. They don't have a dates attached to that, obviously, because they didn't know when they would be able to start. But they do have, and
So I guess the better question is, will they give us, once the approval's done today, can they put a timeline together with dates? That's what I should ask.
they should be able to.
With dates, so we have date certain of when things are gonna happen.
The other question that I had, Chief, is I noticed, have you set your dates for October forward for the next fiscal year?
That's on the agenda.
It's on the agenda, I thought it was, because it's gonna be tough for them to do that if they don't know when you're meeting. When I was looking at it, because I was trying to, imagine what they would come up with, I know that it's the regular September meeting and then your trim hearings, which is a whole other, set of dates, so, so I agree with you. I think they should be putting a timeline together to come back in July and to look at with that. And then, so do you feel like you need to vote on that? I'm not sure.
I think we do need to have a
Okay.
motion to go forward with the next steps that were outlined as well. And including those next steps, I'd like to make sure that we have a definitive timeline and dates. Once now that they know they're gonna get the contract,
Right.
get that set up as well as part of the next steps.
Okay.
So we would take a motion to accept those. All right, got a motion, second?
Second.
Second. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, and then the second question for you is how do you want to interact with the search firm? One of the things in looking at the proposals, again, the procurement team asked all of the firms that submitted proposals, how do they want to work with an 11-member board that has to, follow all of the sunshine rules? That creates complications. I mean, that around what happens in the sunshine, how you get together, the fact you have to have notification 2 weeks in advance, so on and so on. So we asked them, how do you generally like to work in that situation? These were all firms that had experience in Florida. They all had experience with working with boards or entities that had to operate in the sunshine. What they all came back with was they were suggesting putting together, some said a search committee, some just said a committee of a smaller number of members. MGT specifically said, it's on page 9 in their proposal, that they suggested you have 3 or 4 people on a committee that they could meet with between or, the board meetings to run things by and so forth. I want to say 2 things about that. One is that if you were to do that, I would strongly recommend you not have 4, you would have 3 or 5, that you have a number that if you need to vote at that committee, you can take a vote and have a resolution. But the other thing is that I think that the other choice there is that you could decide that you simply want to do this as a committee of the whole and have them meet with you as full board for each and everything. And that what you would probably have to do is to ask Karen to appoint someone from staff or whatever that could act a little bit as a liaison so that, one of you doesn't end up in that logistical job or doesn't have your search firm having to call 10 or 11 members every time something has to get done. But, that more or less, though, that any major decision, presentation, or so forth would happen at the full board meeting, which would obviously be at these monthly meetings, unless you chose to schedule additional meetings. So they're really the two choices that you have, to put together some sort of smaller subcommittee that does not have the final say. They would have to bring things back to the fuller board, or to simply ask the search firm to meet with you as a committee of the whole.
Mr. Chair, I think that just having this at the board level is the way to go. And I think that we'll all make ourselves available individually on an individual basis to meet with the search firm and prep with them, whether it's over Zoom or Teams or a phone call. I mean, I'm on the phone all day, so
Right.
I'll take their call whenever. And I think it'll just be more efficient and be more fair to them and to all of us to just do it together at a board meeting.
I absolutely agree 100%. It should be against the whole full board. Everything we've been through in the past, after going through what we've gone through, at this point, the board should be involved 100%.
Okay. That may increase the timeline a little bit, but I think that frankly, if you can get to a point of agreement and consensus, which has not been available to you up to this point, that it would be well worth that additional time. Okay. Any other question for me or for Laura or Kelly or anybody?
No, I think we're good. Any other questions?
I just had more of a general question, not necessarily for you
Okay.
specifically. I know at the last meeting, the issue was raised whether or not the candidates, I feel like everyone knows I was opposed to redoing this whole thing to begin with. But I feel like having done this now and where we are, it's been very unfair to the candidates who applied and went all the way, up through the process and all this vetting and all this background check and everything at that point. So if there are candidates, and I do see Kevin in the audience today, that have already gone through all of that, are we going to require them to reapply and go through all of that again? Or are they just going to sort of be grandfathered into the candidate pool and this is a new process to get further candidates? I feel like that would be a more fair approach. But I just want to hear from my fellow board members.
Mrs. Chair, can Laura speak to that, because that was a question that we had and she had for the search firms. So just if we could just let you know what they've said, and then you all can decide if that's what you want to go with.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Of course, you can speak with MGT. However, they are a firm and they have a tried and true process, and they didn't go through that full process. So our recommendation would be that they could apply if that's what you all would like. That's up to the board, but that they would go through the full process. MGT didn't do any work in regards to those candidates, as well as that background screening was not conducted by MGT. It was done by SGR, and for a guarantee, they would have to go through the entire process in order to get that guarantee.
And that's the main thing, that most search firms will give you a guarantee that if the person does not work out, that within a period of time, they would redo the work for no cost. But they will only do that, I mean, much like a lot of warranties and guarantees, that they want to be sure that it's been done properly or the way that they can support by their own people. So I think it's not an issue of any of the previous, you had 7 applicants. You went forward with 3 of them, but any of those 7 people could reapply, but they would go through all the steps that everybody else goes through. That's what MGT
Correct,
is
because
saying.
they didn't go through the entire process prior, so they would just go through the same process. It doesn't mean that the board wouldn't have a say on if they moved forward. It's just that they would go through the same process as any new candidate.
Understood, and I'm sure that we're going to decide to do that then, but I think that we all owe the candidates that have been through this and now have to go reapply and start over a huge, giant apology.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I feel bad that we're gonna make them do it, but I think the right thing to do is put everybody back through the same process so that there's no question about if we do hire a previous candidate that applied, there's question of did they do what the other people did? So the fairness is strictly across the board to everybody who applies going forward. I think it makes perfect sense to send them through the process. And I do apologize that we're gonna put you back through it. Like I said, I know I saw Kevin out here. I apologize for putting you back through it a second time, but in fairness to all candidates that are gonna apply, I think that the right thing to do would be go through the process.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our next item is the approval and renewal and continuation of the agreements for Renaissance Learning for MyOn with Miss Laura Peel, right? Oh, Brianna, I'm sorry, Brianna, I saw Laura getting up, so.
Yes.
I just went on with Brianna Ray, Community Collaboration.
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Brianna Ray, and I am a Community Collaborations Coordinator at JWB. In my role, I serve as the lead for the Pinellas Campaign for Grade Level Reading, for which JWB serves as the backbone organization with over 30 partner organizations. The vision of the Grade Level Reading Campaign is that all children in Pinellas County are reading on grade level by the end of 3rd grade. We are encouraged by the progress being made, with reading proficiency increasing from 52% in 2022 to 65% in 2025. Today, I am here to highlight key efforts aligned with the campaign and to request approval for the renewal and continuation of agreements with Renaissance Learning for MyOn. You may be familiar with this because you have kids in school, but MyOn is a digital reading platform that provides children from pre-kindergarten through 5th grade with access to a large library of more than 8,000 digital texts, along with literacy tools that support comprehension and engagement. The platform is designed to encourage daily reading practice, monitor reading activity, and promote consistent engagement both in and out of school. This initiative is funded through a strong partnership. Pinellas County Schools contributes 61% of the funding and provides access to students within the school district. JWB contributes 30% to allow for a community-wide model, ensuring access for all other children in Pinellas County, including those in private schools and homeschool settings, and JWB-funded out-of-school time programs and summer camps. United Way Suncoast provides the remaining 9%. Since its implementation, the initiative has expanded to include the MyOn Street Team and reading challenges to encourage reading during the summer and school breaks. The Street Team participates in literacy events and works in conjunction with the Book Bus, which is staffed by JWB, to provide books to children over the summer in high-risk zones. In 2025, the MyOn Street Team engaged more than 9,000 children at over 100 Book Bus stops, promoting the platform and encouraging reading. Reading challenges further support this effort by incentivizing platform use and encouraging children to continue reading while school is out. For example, during holiday break challenges in November 2025 and March 2026, Pinellas County MyOn users read an average of 1.24 million minutes on the platform, and 22% occurred outside of school time. The MyOn community model reflects a strong collaborative partnership among community and education stakeholders. Continuing these investments will continue to sustain and strengthen this long-standing community literacy effort. The first action item we have is 1, approve to renew and continue the agreements originally procured through a sole source for the MyOn community model for $163,800 and authorize the Chief Executive Officer or designee to finalize and execute all agreements subject to JWB legal review.
Take a motion.
I read the materials before, so I know the second option is for $26,000, I think, for a year or something like that.
Are you referring to the second action item?
Yeah.
So they're two separate things that we fund. The second action item is for the street team and the reading challenges. So that's the second one for $29,384. So they're two separate things.
They're completely separate things.
Yes.
Okay.
And this is for the first action item.
And the 100 and how much is the first one?
It's $163,800.
For what's the term?
So this, and if we have contract questions, I'll bring Laura up, who is the assigned contract manager.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Nice to see you. So that is for the renewal for 1 year. So that would be from 10/1/26 to 9/30/2027 would be for the $163,800.
And same for the second action item as well, same terms?
Correct. It would be through 10/1/26 through 9/30/2026. They both have the same term. But one is in regards to that MyOn community model, which is the model that we have with United Way and Pinellas County School Boards, which combined is that community model. And then the prize and summer staffing is separate. It's meant to enhance the community model.
Got you. Okay, just one further question, just curiosity about the Mayan. Does that, it's an online platform you said, right? Does it?
Yes.
Is there a feature where kids can have it read for them while they're reading along?
Yes, so
like
there
an
are
audio? Because my son, that really benefited from that, so I figured with online it might have a feature like that.
Yeah, there are a ton of different things they
Yeah.
can do. So they can record themselves reading, which helps with fluency. They're able to have it read to them. They can look up definitions, text mark. So there's so many different things that are all helping kids read at grade level and increasing literacy. As I said, JWB's largest part of this investment is really for the community. These are in our neighborhood family centers. They're in our out of school time programs. And it really is helping us like I said, infuse literacy when kids are not only in school but out of school, which we know is very important.
That's great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Second. I was gonna move to approve. But go
I
ahead.
just had a quick comment. Literacy is a huge part of my heart, and so I was really impressed reading the material with the number that was used during Christmas break. I just thought that was really neat to see that it was such a large volume that we're continuing to want to read in between when they were home for the holiday break. So I just wanted to call that out.
Okay, so we have a motion by Ms. Chia, second by Mr. Ungst. Any other discussion?
We have a comment card.
We have a comment card, all right.
Chico Carter from the High Point Neighborhood Family Center.
All right, Chico.
All right, I'm gonna give you 3 minutes.
3 minutes, I'm gonna go quick, I promise. We surprised Brianna today to go about the grade level reading. My name's Chico Carter, if you don't know me. I'm the board chair for High Point Neighborhood Family Center, and I've served 2 roles. I am the program coordinator for the Rotary Club of Clearwater East, Reading Rocks Plus, which we work with kids starting in grade 2, and we stay with them till they're reading at above grade level. That is stopped by Rotarians doing that. That's stopped by St. Pete Collegiate High School students doing that, engaging. I've been a part of High Point Neighborhood Family Center since 2003 and JWB forever, so I've been around for those that don't know me. So we took the grade level reading over at High Point a little bit further because we didn't want our kids to simply just know how to read. We wanted them to be able to write down and express something. So I'm going to give you something that our kids worked on, and I'm going to bring up the vice chair. We're pitch hitting for the staff because we got them working on some other stuff for us with the kids, but I'm going to show you these books.
Good morning. My name is Joshua Shamera. I serve as a senior pastor of Family Life Bible Church, vice chair of High Point Neighborhood Family Center, founder and director of Family Life Academy. I'm a Pinellas County guy, born and raised. My dad was the director of High Point Neighborhood Family Center in the late 90s, early 2000s. My first hours of community service were on the original park that was built where High Point Elementary School is. Not the reason why I'm here today. I grew up with a speech impediment. I grew up with literacy issues, and it was my elementary school teachers who helped me overcome that, and I've been blessed to speak a lot. That's what pastors do. Hopefully I can read too, that makes sense. But there's an idiom that exists, but it's also scripture for us, and it says, out of the mouth of babes. And so the importance of us for this book was the idea for you all to understand that this book was written by 3rd through 5th graders, ages 8 through 10, who put it together, and they called it Friendship and Kindness. And so the biggest thing we can tell you all is that if there's any time in society or in our community to think about friendship and kindness, don't ask yourselves, ask the kids. So I think it's very important that we stand in the gap for our community and our kids, despite whatever your rules are. But if you get the time to take a chance to read this, I worked for the school board for 8.5 years at the middle school, high school level. And one of the things I saw was those middle school, high school kids were still reading at an elementary school level. How do we help change that? How do we bridge the gap and move the needle? Instead of telling them to read, let's help them write. Let's help them create. And so please understand that the funding and the programming and all the work we do is not for us as individuals, but it's for the future of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know how to end that after him. Oh my God, Coach.
And that book is awesome. That's an awesome
Yeah, so
book.
the thing with the book is what we want to do is We're gonna encourage the other neighborhood family centers and nonprofit organizations to get their kids to do the same thing, and we're gonna exchange books. So they pick a theme, and we write books, and we do that. Brianna has been standing, Danielle's been outstanding. They have helped me with my Reading Rocks bus for Rotary. We'll talk about that another time, but I'm just grateful to be here. Yeah, I'm gonna be good about Mid County, but thank y'all for adding 2 more to the best council. Thank you. You know I was gonna do that, yeah. And I'm just saying thank you, and we're grateful for that, and y'all have a blessed day.
Thank you. Do you have any other comment cards? Okay, any further discussion from the board?
I just have a quick comment. As I was flipping through, looking at this is wonderful. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Just shout out to Kenia, Kenia. Her penmanship is awesome. I mean, when you told me the age groups, I went, wow, you know, they don't make kids sit there and, you know, write their letters like they did when we were younger. And I'm like, ooh, better than mine too. So that's all, thank you.
All right, any other discussion? All in favor, aye? Any opposed? Motion carries. On to our second part.
Yeah, so action item 2 is to approve, to renew, and continue the agreement with Renaissance Learning for My On Street Team and Reading Challenges for $29,384 and authorize the Chief Executive Officer or designee to finalize and execute the agreement subject to JWB legal review.
I have a motion. Second. Any discussion? Any comment cards? Okay, all in favor, aye? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Brianna. All right, next up is the approved continuation of DocuSign electronic signature agreement. Ms. Laura Field, our Chief Information Officer.
Good morning. Okay, so I actually have 2 items. The first one is to request approval for a year-long continuation agreement with DocuSign for $12,678.75. JWB uses DocuSign heavily in its processes to make them more efficient, streamline workflows, and enhance security for efficiency and security of signatures. So we also use it externally with our contracts with our funded agencies and our vendors, and internally for processing payments, contract signatures, HR, and other workflows required for business. So many of you may wonder why I'm bringing an item that's less than $13,000 today, and it's because of the new board policy from a couple of months ago. It now requires approval if the aggregate amount is above $50,000. And in this case, we have been contracting with DocuSign since 2020, and JWB has spent over $59,000 in the past. With this $12,678, it brings the total to $71,828.08 over a 6-year period. So that's it. Any questions?
Move approval.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. On to your next one.
Thank you. Yeah, so my next item is the removal of surplus and obsolete inventory. As you know, we come to the board twice a year to remove surplus and obsolete inventory. This is required by state statute. It requires that we classify items that are obsolete or the continued use is uneconomical or inefficient. And we bring the items that we bring to the board and take off, we either donate or recycle, or sometimes, depending on the condition, we can throw it away. The attached list combines items that JWB is seeking to remove. All items on the list that we think may still have some useful life, we offer to our funded agencies on a first-come, first-served basis. And then, like I said, all other items will be recycled or disposed of. There are no items on the list that have a net book value at this time. I do want to point out one clerical error, and I apologize. I just found it this morning. It's on page 3, and it's the 6th item down. It says that we had purchased the laser printer in 2029. It was actually purchased in 2019. So, but I did want to point that out, and Olivia can fix that in the minutes and reflect it for next time. But otherwise, that's all I have. Any questions?
Motion to approve. Second. Any discussion? All in favor, aye? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Next up is interim CEO Karen Bogus, approved the contract amendment for Laura Kruger-Brock.
So good morning again. Laura Krugerbach is a certified public accountant and a certified public examiner. She worked for JWB as its chief financial officer from April 2020 to March 2024. She has been involved in consulting services with us over this time period, the last few months, and bringing forward this recommendation for approval for the extension of her contract through December of 2026, through the end of December 2026, for up to $60,000. And in this process, she would continue to oversee and help us with our budget as we move through that process, as well as a chief financial officer search that we would like to begin. Any questions?
Motion to accept? So motion and second? Second, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, aye? Any opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Boja's number 2. Next.
Yes, I'm up again. And this is regarding our advanced repayment plan, as well as a board recommended proposed board policy change. And I would like to call Braxton Everett up as our senior program finance manager here as well. He has helped work on this over the last several months. So, you know, I know we've been under discussions over the last several months in regards to advances. We have a number of agencies and programs with current outstanding advances. And so what we're bringing forward today is that we allow programs to submit a plan to us by the end of this fiscal year that would look at a 2-year repayment plan process if they needed that. They can certainly pay it back before then. And in some cases, as we understand, if they're not able to pay it back within the 2 years, that we would consider, and I would bring back to the board, any of those that would need a lengthier time period and a rationale why. And so in addition to that, sorry, the proposed policy change that we're talking about is moving forward, any advance that is requested to JWB and reviewed and would be approved, that it would be paid within the fiscal year that it was granted in, rather than keeping that process open. So again, that would be after October 1st, 2026. And we would put special conditions in the contract accordingly, adding the language about repayment for those that are under the requirement for repayment, and then of course for any new ones. And these are just the list of the current outstanding advances. And we brought this forward to the Finance Committee, and they approved these recommendations to bring to the full board. Any questions?
Mr. Chair, I did watch the Finance Committee from Hawaii, so I was up to speed on that, and I really appreciate all your work on this, and I've talked to providers and our partners, and I don't think there's any problem with what we're proposing. I think it's good for everybody, so I'll move approval.
Thank you. Second?
I just have a quick question regarding this. Because I did have some concerns looking at it, and contrary to statements that have been publicly made about me, I don't have any problem with requiring advances to be repaid, and I've always said that. However, my concern is that some of the NFCs, can you put that
Yes.
back? Okay, so when I was looking at, thank you, when I was looking at this, my concern is really the NFCs and the smaller programs that we might be all of or most of the funder for. And when I was looking at this and I was, doing some math for what that monthly payment would be over a 2-year period, some of them are gonna have to come up with like $8,000 a month, in addition to whatever their operating expense is in order to pay that back. So I don't know if there's provisions in this policy or if it was maybe talked about at the Finance Committee more about allowing a longer runway, maybe, a 5-year or something else. I don't want us to be in a position where we're essentially crushing small nonprofits because of, requiring this repayment or changing our policy to require this repayment in this way.
So absolutely, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we did add that in there, because this actually came from me, I'm the one who brought this forward to start with. But we did add in there that it's a 2-year repayment, but if they can't make 2 years, then it would just be brought back to the board to try to extend it and give them the time they need to make it work. So that exactly what you're saying doesn't happen. We don't wanna unfund somebody just because they couldn't make the payments and they got a great program working, and we don't want kids to go without. You know, our goal here is to make sure we're educating the kids and moving them up, right? So we did add that in there, and I think you can speak more to that, Ms. Bogus, but it is in there to extend it if need be.
And we also, I think a lot of people, or I shouldn't say a lot of people, there was a few of us at the finance table that issued the same sentiment, you know, and specifically NFCs with that. And while we don't want to necessarily make that additional time up front, we discussed that, yes, there would be those additional conversations. What would they allow to make sure that they're comfortable to be able to say, I need more time? You know, and that was kind of given to us that would be in the discussions when they're coming up with their plans, and that we would be allowing that, because there was a lot of, you know, people that were concerned for the exact same reasons you are.
Absolutely. So what we'll do is our finance team will be working with these agencies over the next 3 months for them to submit a plan. And if it goes over the 2 years, which we, you know, said was okay, we will be bringing that back forward so that, you know, we inform you all along the way what that looks like. I know one of the agencies has already submitted a proposal for that they would be able to handle over a 4-year time period. So, you know, that will definitely be coming forward to all of you.
Thank you, that's very helpful, thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's important for the board to know, when we talked about the finance committee too, it's important for the board to know if we're gonna go over those 2 years and why we're going over them. Just so that, you know, this is a loan, an interest-free loan of taxpayer dollars that we're sending out to get a program off the ground and get it running, that we vetted and fully feel like it's a great program and we should definitely be doing it, and it's gonna benefit the children. But if they can't be repaid in that time period, which I think just the board should know why and what that is, and that there is a definitive set timeline to get it repaid, where it just doesn't just stay outstanding balance forever and ever, you know, because there's no control on it. So really, it's just more of a control type thing to make sure the board knew what was going on.
Yeah, that was just my main concern was, you know, the time frame and the amount for some of those, you know, smaller agencies.
Makes sense. So we have a motion from Mr. Oaks, so a second?
Sorry to make you go back to that screen
Okay.
again. What's the distinction of the different colors on the bottom?
It's just to.
Just to make it easier to read?
Visually, yeah,
Okay,
visually that makes it
that's
easier to
fine.
read.
I just wanted to make sure it didn't mean something different in the chart.
The ones at the bottom, I think, are all the same program.
So
Like,
Yeah.
it's improving.
yeah, same
Oh,
provider.
like they're together,
Mhm.
right?
Same agency, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Do we have a second? All right, we got a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, Ms. Bogus,
you.
last one.
Last one is the adopting the first quarter of fiscal year 27 board meetings.
So did you guys want to take both those actions as one? Because Brian made the motion to approve action item 1, the repayment plan. And then we have action item 2, which is the policy change.
Yeah, I believe, let's say my motion was to approve agenda item H.
So as
4H.
both?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. No, that's okay. And so the dates that we have proposed are October 15th at 9 a.m., November 19th at 9 a.m., and December 17th at 9 a.m. Looking at, you know, I know Colleen looked at the other county commission schedule and the school board schedule.
Okay, we have a motion to accept dates.
Motion to accept.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, moving on to our presentations. Our first presentation is the FY27 forecast and funding parameters. Ms. Porter, Director of Accounting and Controller, and Hunter, our Senior Budget Analysis.
Good morning. So we have this morning to present to you the FY27 preliminary budget funding parameters and the multi-year forecast. This is our 27 budget development timeline. We are on June 25th, where we're presenting a draft budget to the board. We will begin tomorrow notifying agencies of their allocation amounts. July 1, we'll receive the certification of taxable values from the property appraiser. At that time, we'll be able to calculate the rolled back rate and make any updates to the budget scenarios and forecasts. The next item for the board will be July 23rd, asking you to adopt a proposed millage rate and a proposed budget. We will then have some notification requirements, come back in August to present any changes to the Finance Committee. Those have typically been minor changes. And then in September, we will move into our first and our final trim budget hearings. The purpose of our presentation today is to review the funding parameters that were used to develop this budget and provide a multi-year forecast. We'll be seeking guidance on potential property tax reform impact, as well as the millage rate scenarios that staff has prepared for you. Property tax reform, very hot topic. I was fortunate to be able to attend the FGFOA conference last week, and as you would imagine, there was much conversation about the reform and the significant impact it's going to have among the attendees. If adopted in November, the homestead exemption will raise to $150,000 in 2027, then to $250,000 in 2028, being adjusted for inflation thereafter. The homestead growth cap would remain the same, but the non-homestead growth cap would be reduced from 10% to 5%. JWB would begin to see initial impacts starting in FY28. Staff included the impact of reform in our forecasts. We've prepared 3 millage rate scenarios for you. The first being the rollback rate. We have estimated what that would be at 0.7916. This would be an approximate 4% reduction to the current millage rate. The rollback rate is the millage rate that yields the same amount of revenue, excluding new construction, so that the net effect to a taxpayer is 0. The second scenario is a reduced millage rate by about 2% to 0.8083, and this is splitting between the rollback rate and the current. This has become staff's recommended scenario and was approved by the Finance Committee. The third scenario would maintain the current millage rate at 0.825. This slide provides the millage rate history and the impact to taxpayers of each scenario. So the estimated average taxable value of a single-family home is $264,831. That's an approximate 4% increase. As you would expect when you see scenario 1, there is a 0 net effect to the taxpayer. Scenario 2, which is using that mid-rate, would be an impact of about $4.40 per taxpayer. And maintaining the current millage rate of 0.825 would increase the ad valorem paid to JWB approximately $8.83. We can see here the impact of the 3 scenarios on ad valorem revenue. The current millage rate would bring in approximately $115.8 million. A reduction in the millage rate to 0.8083 would yield about $2.3 million less revenue, and going to the rollback rate of 0.796 would yield about $4.7 million less revenue compared to the current millage rate. Funding parameters that was considered, these were used to develop the scenarios for you. Staff has taken a prudent approach to the budget. We did not make drastic changes to FY27 in response to the potential tax reform, but we took a hard look at how JWB can best position itself for the possible impact in FY28. There was a reduction of 6 FTEs through attrition, 4 associate manager and 2 senior program positions. Looking at capital RFA, staff recognized there is a need for capital items in many programs, and there is a benefit to making this a competitive program. Staff was able to include capital RFA in 2 of the scenarios for FY27 and remain within the board's guidelines for administrative rate and assigned fund balance. For cost of living adjustments, recognizing the impact of inflation, all scenarios include an increase of 1.5% for staff and salaries for eligible programs. An eligible program is a program with less than 10% lapse in FY25 that is not being reduced in FY27. For new and expanded programs, no funds are allocated here. If the property tax reform passes, it may limit new funding allocations and affect the programs supported by other potential revenue sources. If this occurs, staff may need to recommend funding adjustments to prioritize the most critical need of children and families. And finally, program reductions of $3.6 million. As is JWB's practice, staff analyze programs to identify opportunities for right sizing. This includes looking at lapsed funds to identify areas where program reductions would not impact the critical services that JWB is providing. I will turn it back to Ms. Bogus for details on these proposed reductions.
So the first slide is fiscal year 27 proposed reductions for our internal collaboratives and collectives. As you will see, Fatherhood Collaborative, we are looking to reduce it by $40,000. We had a contract with a consultant to help when that initiative was getting first onboarded, so we no longer need that consulting contract. So that's the kind of lens we looked at through all of these. So there is a $665,000 reduction to these internal collaboratives, collectives, and campaigns. As we move to the second slide, this is for our JWB funded programs. Every year we go through a program review process we started in February, March timeframe, and we're looking at programs that have for 2 years had over 10% lapse. We look at targeted service levels. If programs are not achieving at a minimum 60% of their target for 2 years, we're looking at right-sizing both the targeted service levels as well as the budget. In terms of, so Operation PAR, we fund 2 programs with them that were separate. We have, with the agency, recommended that they merge those 2 contracts into one. And because they were struggling meeting targeted service levels, right-sizing the budget and reducing it, those 2 program budgets together around $191,000. Then I'm going to jump to FSI. Our pool, FSI, Family Services Initiative pool, was created like 12, 15 years ago. And it was really created at that time to help families who had what we called a bump in the road. So if they, for example, had a medical issue that took them out of work for a month, that Family Services Initiative pool they could access to help pay their rent, help pay utility bills, food, and other basic items. Now, moving forward, we've seen this pool lapse over the last several years significantly. We've been able to redirect those funds coming to the board for example, the most recent one was BOLI, when they thought that they were going to have challenges with their funding for supported housing. So we have been able to utilize those funds, but looking at this and looking at the future, we said we would reduce the pool by $1.6 million. We have contracts that are associated providing navigation services. And just like we're talking about the evolution of anything, looking at the providers that are providing the navigation, having it longer term, because families are not coming with necessarily a bump in the road. You know, they have complex, challenging situations, and infusing financial literacy and budgeting in that, because what we're trying to do and accomplish is long-term stabilizing, not a short-term Band-Aid fix. So that's where you see those reductions. And then Big Brothers and Big Sisters comprehensive mentoring program. They have struggled since COVID, with achieving their targeted service levels, and we've been working with them several years now on this. And so we have aligned the budget and reduced the number of participants that they're serving for fiscal year '27. So that's the 2.9 million reduction. I'm sorry, I'm turning it back over to Leslie.
Thank you. And we will now look at the scenarios. So all forecasts were prepared using the Property Appraiser's Tax Impact Tool as of June 23rd. Under each scenario and in each year, JWB will meet the board's guidelines for less than 10% administrative rate and an assigned target fund balance of 25%. Scenario 1 uses the estimated rolled back rate. Millage has been reduced to 0.7916. It incorporates all the funding parameters that we discussed. The highlights under this scenario: there is no capital RFA in FY '27 or '28. It would resume in FY '29. We anticipate program reductions of $25 million in FY '28 and a reduction of 5 FTEs also in FY '28. The projected unassigned fund balance in FY '31 would be about $19.6 million. We do not include lapse in our budget. However, we do incorporate it into the forecast. And this is because the budget is a living document. It's a formal spending plan that's adopted annually by the board. It reflects the expected revenues and expenditures based on known conditions at the time of adoption. So the assigned and unassigned fund balance projections are budget-based, and they will assume the plan would be executed as approved. In practice, we know that conditions change throughout the year. Staff turnover occurs internally and within our funded partners. Projects or programs may shift. So as a result, some level of lapse is expected. For this reason, we incorporate the lapse into the forecast to allow us to provide the board with more accurate, real-time projections that reflect current conditions rather than static assumptions. I would also like to highlight, it's a little hard to see on this screen on your sheets, that we have updated the descriptions on the scenarios. The property value line now reads as taxable property value. We feel that provides better clarification. And in the forecast assumptions, the taxable property value line incorporates the taxable value estimates using the Property Appraiser's Tax Impact Tool. So this display anticipates the decline in taxable property values due to property tax reform if it's adopted by fiscal year. This is a recap of the parameters in this scenario. Scenario 2 reduces the millage rate to 0.8083. This was staff's recommended scenario and was approved by the Finance Committee for a presentation to the board. Also incorporates the funding parameters we discussed. Highlights under this scenario, distinguishing it from scenario 2. A capital RFA of $1.5 million is included in each year, and program reductions for FY '28 are anticipated at $22.5 million. We're maintaining the reduction of 5 FTEs, and projected unassigned fund balance in FY '31 stands around $16.7 million. Again, this is just a recap. Scenario 3 maintains the current millage rate of 0.825. This is the same as scenario 2, incorporating that capital RFA, but the program reductions are now estimated to be $20 million instead of $22.5 million. And the projected unassigned fund balance would be $17.1 million at the end of FY '31. This is a recap of scenario 2's funding parameters. Several factors impacted staff's recommendation. looking at the possible impact of property tax reform and feeling that JWB needs to be ready to adapt. The rolled back rate creates a need for the largest program reductions and reduces the ability to offer capital RFA for the next 2 years. The mid-rate, the 2% reduction, provides some immediate tax relief while balancing the amount of future program reductions and allowing capital RFA. That is the reason that staff chose to recommend option 2. We'll now move on using scenario 2 to the details of the preliminary budget. This slide demonstrates the change in revenues comparing current year to FY27. There would be a 1 3/4% increase in ad valorem collections. You see a large 17% decrease in interest income, and this is due to 2 factors. So with the board's strategic spending down of the fund balance, there is less cash available to invest. So when we compared April of 26 to April of 25, the average balance invested decreased 10.75% to 82.9 million. And the second factor impacting that is the fact that interest rates have declined. So the average rate of return during the first 7 months of FY25 was 4.27%, and this year it is 3.65. Finally, you'll see an increase in contributions, and that is due to an increase in ticket pricing for the Cooperman Bogue. Here we see the change in program expenditures. There's an overall reduction of approximately 4 3/4 million. There's 1.5% COLA included for eligible programs. This was reduced from the current year's COLA of 3%. And we see a reduction in capital RFA to 1.5 million. Also, as we had discussed, there are no funds allocated for new and expanded programs. On the administration and direct program support, we have an overall reduction of approximately 550,000 or 4%. For non-administration expenditures, we have an overall increase of 4%, and that is due to statutory fee increases. For next steps, JWB will receive the certification of taxable values and calculate the rolled back rate on July 1. If the board wishes to proceed with scenario 2, staff will prepare the budget based on the midpoint between the current millage rate and the rolled back rate. And we will be coming back to you on July 23rd, asking you to adopt the proposed millage rate and proposed budget. Thank you.
Any quick discussion?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to reiterate, I watched the Finance Committee meeting and very much appreciate all the work the staff has put into this, and the Finance Committee and our CEO, and I'm supportive of scenario number 2. I did think that Mr. Hendrick has a really good point of it would be probably prudent for us to look at the fund balance policy, the 3 months, whether that's really necessary. And I felt like his insight on what the school district does with a different percentage and maybe would give us a little more flexibility going forward. So probably a good time to evaluate that and bring it back to us in the next couple months to look at. So thank you.
Any other discussion, questions? Ms. Chia?
No questions. I just want to state that I'm comfortable with what staff is recommending here. You know, generally I would be for going to the rollback rate, but given the uncertainty of tax reform and what that might want to, you know, the impact, the short-term impact for JWB this year and next year, I think it's a little more prudent to, and it's still a reduction without being all the way back to the rollback rate. So that's my 2 cents.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Leslie. Okay, next presentation is the 27-28 strategic plan. Dr. Mary Grace Duffy, our consultant from Cambridge Hill Partners, and Jamar Lopez, senior strategic researcher.
Good morning again. Jomar and I are going to share this presentation, so I'm going to do a little bit of the front end. He's going to actually look at the plan, and then we'll look at what's coming next and, any questions or comments you might have. So I know that actually the conversation about a new strategic plan started more than 2 years ago. Some of you weren't even on the board at that point. So given that there's been this, 2+ year development of where we're at, we thought it would be really useful for us to just do very quickly, because I know, we're approaching the witching hour here, kind of where we've been, where we are, and where we're going with the plan, and give you a chance. So the last, and let's see, do we have is it forward? Yep. So the last full plan actually was from FY20 to FY25. So you know that we're beyond that. Our plan at that point, when we were going to renew it, 2.5 years ago when that work started, was once again to do another 5-year plan. And then we had back-to-back hurricanes. You had a lot of changes in the larger external environment. You've had a shift in CEO. So a lot of things have gone on. And as a result of that, the board approved what we're just calling a gap year, so that you had a strategic plan that you could be working from, but it was not one that was long-term. And then last year, just about a year ago, you approved the development of a new 2-year plan that would extend for FY 26-27, the upcoming fiscal year, and the year following that. And again, we made that, I think, we made that suggestion to you to do a 2-year rather than a 5-year plan. One, because there is an increasingly unpredictable environment, and at that point, there was a little bit of whispering about the property tax stuff. We didn't know things that were happening in the larger environment. And frankly, as we did some best practices review, it became clear that it is really difficult for an organization to write a 5-year plan without beginning to move into the kind of fictional writing stage. Okay, so we wanted to stay out of that, and really kind of stay with best practices. So where we are then, we decided, okay, we're going to develop this 2-year plan. So a couple of things went on to pull all of that together, the draft that you currently have. So one, staff really analyzed and evaluated current programs, and suggested funding shifts as appropriate. And that is something that's ongoing. I mean, Leslie just talked about that in her presentation about the budget. So we wanted to be sure to begin to incorporate some of the work that had already been done in the draft that you had, and also recognize that that's not the end of the story, that that's going to continue to go on. We also conducted an environmental scan, and the purpose of this was we wanted really solid data that we felt was comprehensible and reliable with that it would be accurate. So we looked at current state data related to children and families in Pinellas County, noticed where there were changes from the last strategic plan, began to see if we could identify any emerging needs and that sort of thing. We did some best practices reviews that would be really nationwide. I mean, the problems and the challenges that children and families have in Pinellas County is not unique to this county. And so what else is going on that we could look at and begin to think about it? And then there was also what was called the Futures Review by Tofflers and Associates as a JWB consultant. So those things went on in terms of the environmental scan. Then we also really thought it was important to get stakeholder input. And so what happened with that was there were individual interviews with all board members, with some community leaders, obviously not all, with some elected officials, with providers, and with JWB staff. So we tried to get a 360 view, knowing we were not going to be able to speak to everybody, but we wanted to have a perspective from all of those different arenas. There were also focus groups with the 3 community councils, and then Toffler put on 2 futures, what are kind of futures and scenario planning workshops. The first one involved community leaders, providers and JWB staff, and again, representatives from those groups. And then the second one was for the board. And I know not all of you were able to be there, but many of you were at that particular plan. And then we began out of that data to start thinking about and exploring not just what's currently going on, but looking at any new or expanded initiatives that were suggested by the stakeholders. And I can tell you that they were very varied, both in scope, in terms of cost, you know, the focus, if you think about JWB's focus areas, and frankly, in terms of feasibility. But we felt like we needed, if we were going to ask people, what do you think, we then needed to give that some real consideration with that. So that was what went into the development of the plan. So now that's where we've been. So where we are now is that you have a draft plan was sent to you last month with that. What you're going to see, it has 6 result areas with goals and strategies and operating principles. And Joe Moore is really going to walk you through that, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about that. I want to remind you that that does not have operational, tactical, timeline-driven plans at this point. We want to do that after you have had an opportunity to affirm the result areas, the goals, and the strategies. Okay, we don't want to put the cart before the horse and approve things that then are not even going to, you know, develop things that are not going to be in the plan. So we're making the assumption that as of, you know, once as a result of today's discussion and whatever feedback you have, that there well may be some modifications made to the plan. And that's what you would be asked. You'll get those, and then you'd be asked to approve those in July. And I just want to say that we are particularly concerned that with the final plan, there's alignment with both budget and general organizational capacity. Again, this goes back to we're not writing fiction. We need to be able to implement this. So you're going to see this iterative process that is going on around the current budget development, and then the strategic plan has to look at that. You also need to look at where are your priorities so that when you're making budget decisions, you keep those in mind. So it's this back and forth. And that's not going to end in July when you approve the budget or, you know, go forward with the budget or go forward with the strategic plan. That is something that's really, as Leslie said in her presentation, it's a living document. So that is going to be an ongoing piece of work for staff and for the board around keeping that alignment and doing that iteration. So with that, I want to turn you over to Joe Moore to actually go through the plan, and then we'll just talk about next steps after that. And you're gonna be a bit of time, so I'm gonna.
Okay. Thank you, Mary Grace. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Jomar Lopez, Senior Strategic Researcher. As Mary Grace said, I will provide a brief overview of our prior plan and compare to the proposed plan that you've seen as an informational item. I'll give you some key updates across all of our 6 result areas, and then from there I will transition it back to Mary Grace and to our interim CEO, Karen Boges, for discussion and feedback from you all. All right, so let's get the party started. I want to assure, as well as leadership and Mary Grace, we want to assure you all that the focus continues to be on children and family well-being across the key areas. There's a continued commitment to data-informed decision-making within the strategic plan and consistent investment in our proven initiatives. Moving into result area 1, we have a continued focus on supporting development milestones and caregiver engagement. Some of the key updates compared to the previous plan, we are proposing a stronger emphasis on early screening, particularly more universal screening among that 0 to 3 cohort. Expanding partnerships beyond the JWB funding programs. We realize that we can't do everything because of our statutory requirements. So expanding those partnerships is going to be able to really magnify the ripple effects of the work we do. And lastly is that new attention to autism service gaps that we hear very much so from Pinellas County families. What this means is we're aiming for earlier identification and better connection to services for children and families. Within Result Area 2 of School Readiness, the continued focus is on supporting children entering kindergarten ready to learn. Some key updates is the increased focus on encouraging VPK or voluntary pre-kindergarten participation, greater attention to removing barriers to enrollment. We understand that as much as families want to enroll their children in VPK, there are definitely some barriers to that, such as transportation and other socioeconomic barriers. Greater attention, stronger emphasis on connecting families to available programs, such as through our Family Services Initiative. And what this means is we're building upon that framework within early childhood development in that 0 to 3 population to prepare those 3 to 4-year-olds and connect them to early learning opportunities before they start school. Student success is a reframe from what was previously school success. It is continuing to focus on supporting academic progress, attendance, and literacy outcomes. A broader definition is a key of success, including engagement, belonging, and well-being, was added to the proposed plan. There's a greater emphasis on family involvement in supporting student success and stronger collaboration with school partners to identify and address gaps. I do want to make a note that within student success, the language can be quite broad, but to Mary Grace's earlier point, you're going to find more of those details around how we're working on student success within that operations plan contingent on the board's approval. What this means is that we're looking for a more complete approach to helping students stay on track and succeed within schools. Next is promotion of children's physical, mental, and social well-being. In the prior plan, it was referred to as prevention of child abuse and neglect. We're continuing to focus on ensuring that children are safe, healthy, and supported within Pinellas County, and there's continued work in mental health, child safety, and family stabilization. Where we see some key updates in this proposed plan is that emphasis on the impact of digital devices and social media on youth, as we hear a lot from our Children's Mental Health Initiative as well as our community councils, the expanded efforts to help children remain safely in their homes, and lastly, that the continued strengthening of screening and connections to care, coming back to that universal screening that we also saw in early childhood development. What this would signify is we're aiming for stronger connections. We're addressing both ongoing and emerging challenges affecting children's well-being. The next result area, strengthening community for family stability, previously called strengthening communities, is focused on community-driven efforts and family support services, with some key updates being that greater focus on workforce readiness, particularly for the older children in those adolescent teenage years, and financial stability for the families. The sustainability of neighborhood efforts and more consistent use of community input. So really just fortifying the neighborhoods that the children and the families are growing up in. And what this would mean for us as JWB is trying to aim for a stronger connection between community efforts and long-term stability for the families. Lastly, as part of my spiel, is organizational capacity. This result area is really looking inward at JWB. So more so about workforce readiness and ensuring that we have the technology that we need in order to respond to our community appropriately. So there's continuing that focus on building a skilled workforce and strong data systems to support decision making. And Laura PR, Chief Information Officer, is leading many of those endeavors already. Some key updates include increased focus on communicating JWB's role and impact within Pinellas County, expanding the use of data to inform decisions in real time and trying to automate that process. Exploration of diversifying funding and financial stability, and that could indicate as well looking for new funding streams for the very nonprofits that we're serving. And lastly, continued review of programs for alignment and effectiveness as we continue to do. What this means is we're really aiming to be more agile and be a more resilient organization as we've seen the landscape change just in the last 5 years. And so we want to continue to hold on to that resiliency and adapt to these changing conditions. So some key takeaways that I want to leave you with before I hand it back to Mary Grace. Again, we're building on a very strong foundation from our prior plan. We concluded that very successfully. And we're focusing on strengthening, not expanding the core work, given some of the upcoming concerns we have. We're hoping to address some clear gaps that we've heard from the community and some emergent needs as well. And overall, we're aiming to maintain flexibility, giving some changing funding and upcoming conditions, as you've already heard with the budget presentation. From there, I will hand it back to Mary Grace to end us off. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe Mark. Okay. So as I said earlier, in terms of what's next or where are we going, one, the staff is going to ask you to approve possibly a revised draft. I mean, again, depending on what your feedback is today. And then once that's approved, operational planning will begin. And the emphasis is going to be on the coming fiscal year. Again, with any of these plans, you can plan better for the present. You know, we're going to go forward, but the emphasis is going to be on what are you going to do in the next fiscal year, thinking of all the changes that might be coming. And then as part of that, obviously there needs to be periodic reviews and modifications so that the plan remains relevant and importantly remains feasible. Okay, so that's the, and I guess, do we have questions and comments? Yes, we do. Okay, so now you're the group that has to speak. But truly, do you have any questions about this, concerns? You know, things that you feel like were either miscast in the plan or missing?
Any questions from the board? That's pretty straightforward.
Anything you want to see revised before this comes back to you?
I just would like to get it over with.
I didn't hear that, Brian.
I'd like to get it over with.
You'd like to get it over with, okay.
I'm always interested in the how, right? The next level down, which of course is not developed yet, you know. So to me, you know, the categories and the statements, you know, the measures within them, you know, all seem fine to me.
Very good work.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for everything you've done. There was a mention that you were going to be addressing gaps from the community. Could you highlight on what some of those gaps are?
Sure. So one of the gaps is, one example is the autism with individuals who are receiving interventions for autism spectrum disorder. So what we're hearing a lot within some of our regional reports as well as from the community councils is that when the parents are concerned and would like a screening for autism, they have to wait a significant amount of time before they can see a provider to then get the diagnosis, and then it's also a length of time until they can access therapies for those. So in the meantime, they're kind of in a waiting game. Not only that, but my understanding, as I don't have any family or friends with ASD, but my understanding is that there's a lot of complexity when it comes to providing the children the therapies that they need. Not only ABA, but then there's also complexities such as they may need a dietitian, they may need a speech language pathologist, they may need genetic screening, and these are very high level medical care that a lot of these families don't know how to navigate. And so that really came forward, and that was brought into the plan under early childhood development.
And I would add to that, you know, we heard that in some cases it could take up to 2 years for a diagnosis. So even families who have resources, they have insurance, they have a willingness, they have an understanding of what, you know, they're seeing as developmental delays in their child, they can't get help with it until they have a diagnosis. So that's a big gap. The other big gap that we see a lot is there is a huge amount of support in the community for VPK programs. But getting families to have the ability to enroll their child there is where there's a gap. The programs are good. Many of them are quite good. Many of them have openings. So, you know, it's getting the ability for the child to be there, particularly since some of them are still partial day, which makes a problem for working families or families who have transportation difficulties with that. So they're just two examples of what we've seen. And I would just add the third thing was that we heard a lot about teenagers, not just their involvement with social media and how detrimental that can be socially and developmentally for them, but that the opportunities for learning how to be a good worker. I mean, I'd be curious, if I said to this room, raise your hand if you had a part-time job in high school, I bet a lot of hands would go up, right? It's not so much now. Those jobs are not there because people are staying in them well after what would be an entry-level position for them. So, it's that sort of thing of how do you do that kind of training to prepare a child to be more independent, to be responsible with a job, et cetera. So we heard a lot about that too. Okay.
Yeah, that's followed on the autism part. Like, I've been working with staff on it for, I don't know, probably 6, 7 months now. Autism, we had a presentation by one of the doctors from Johns Hopkins about a year ago here, and we did learn that children are waiting at least minimum 2 years to get diagnosed. And without diagnosis, they can't get treatment. Pinellas County really suffers when it comes to autism right now for our kids. And we know that now that autism is not just something new, it's something that's been around for decades and decades. We were just calling it other things back in the day, and now we know all those things we called it back then, such as Asperger's, things like that, is really autism. And so we're working on some programs, so it's important that we look forward in our strategic plan that we include autism in there. It's a place where Pinellas County kids are lacking, and they need that support. Like, there's no tomorrow, they need that support. So we're trying to come up with some programs, and I'm trying to do some other stuff as well that we can do to create autism places for the kids.
And I'd just like to add to that, because I know we had, mentioned it in a prior board meeting, but I would like to speak with you about that a little more, Karen, because I think there are a lot of people who don't understand how to reach the funding sources. And what I mean by that is the federal government that will cover a lot of the testing and things like that. But I think especially in Florida, a lot of times I've experienced there's a gap in people understanding how to get that and that it's available to them. So just having my background in healthcare, I'd like to understand a little more about what people are seeing and maybe, help point you to some areas that might help connect people to those resources better.
Okay, any other questions for Mary Grace or Jamar? Thank you guys very much, appreciate it. Okay, moving on to our Chief Executive Officer report.
So I know we've been here for a really long time, so I will keep it as short as possible. You all have a lengthy report of all the things that are happening both in the community and internally here at JWB. Just 3 quick things I want to say. Thank you to everyone. I want to publicly say this. Thank you to everyone who has sent me an email, called with kind words, with support during this transition time. I truly appreciate every single message that I've received. I have tried. I am still working through getting messages back. I'm setting up meetings with our funded partners, CEOs, as well as other community leaders, and as much as possible over the next, I would say, couple of months. So I know some of you are we're working on getting that scheduled, so thank you. I want to say thank you to Leslie, Hunter, and Braxton, because we have spent hours working on the budget to bring to you all. And I just want to say thank you to the 3 of them. And also, there's so many efforts that are happening in the community. Something we just did yesterday, adaptive swim lessons for neurodivergent children, and how important that is, that's happening. So that's one effort. Our fatherhood initiative, married with our children's mental health initiative, to have a panel discussion at Keyshawn's Corner this past few weeks ago regarding gun violence and men's mental health in our community. And, connecting our grand families with resources. We do that all throughout the year, but Mid-County had their final event at the end of May. So those are just a snapshot of things where our staff are out in the community. I know board members have been out in the community at some of these events as well. And so just want to share all that. And then if you have any questions on this report, we also send this report out to all of our providers, and we post it online as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next is information items. Anything the board members want to bring up from information items? All right, seeing none, we'll ask the Honorable Mr. Bartlett to read the anniversaries.
All right, missed April, so we gotta start there. All right, Christina Quintana, 1 year. Hunter Miracle, 2 years. Amanda Bayer, 4 years. Cindy Matson, 5 years. Loriane Hayes, 10 years. Ann Crawford, 12 years. And now we have May anniversaries. Adelson Leon, 1 year. Susan Parker, 3 years. Jacqueline Santos, 3 years. Nehemiah Warner, 3 years. Sarah Smith, 5 years. Kelly Grossman, 7 years. And here's a good one. This is the biggest one so far. Laura Peel, 33 years.
Congratulations. Thank you, everybody, for your continued support and working with JWB. We appreciate all of our staff very much. And now we're up for public comment.
Okay, I have one card at this moment. It's from CASA, and I believe it is Ms. Forsyth or Ms. Clark who will be speaking.
She left, I think, didn't she?
No, she's not.
Okay.
Press your mic. Better? Okay, Noelle Clark, Chief Justice Officer at Casa Pinellas. Ariana was here. She was sitting front and center for those of you that saw her. But she's also a single mom and her son is entering the dorms. So she stayed as long as possible, but did want to be here. So she sent a letter to the board and to Ms. Bogus, and I'm hoping everyone received it. This was, I believe, yesterday or the day before. Does that sound right? It addresses the compliance issues, and she wanted to both give a statement about CASA being as transparent and accountable as possible and wanting to own up to everything as detailed in the letter with regard to some growth that we had and some financial internal structure difficulties that we had. To be very clear, there was no malfeasance in any accounting or finances. Rather, CASA grew at a pretty rapid rate. Domestic violence in our community is growing at a rapid rate, and we increase services, funding, et cetera, to meet that community need. We did, in order to meet the financial, raise to the financial levels that we needed, we brought in an external accounting firm that is familiar with VOCA, which is one of our top funders, Victims of Crime Act, and brought in a fractional accounting organization. We increased internally within our finance team and hired a consultant program manager to coordinate, to ensure that we had thorough, well-developed, and actually achievable processes. Those were some of the notes. It's really a high level of the letter itself which details more, but we're here to take questions. We want to be as accountable and transparent as earthly possible. We value greatly our partnership with JWB. Some of you I know well. You might see me in courtrooms or otherwise. That's usually the forum I'm in, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Just want to say thank you and pass our thanks on to Adriana as well. Thank you for the letter. That's exactly what we're looking for. We have a great partnership with you guys, and showing your faith to move forward with corrective actions and take care of business is exactly what we want to see. So you're right on target. Thank you very much for what you're doing.
Okay, I guess I can sub out then. Well, thank you all so much for having me.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay, we'll take a motion to adjourn. So be it.